So unemployment in Fresno is at 5%. A year and a half ago, when Mayor Lee Brand took office, it was more than double that, and that was just one of the pieces of good news he shared at this past week's State of the City address. In addition to the unemployment numbers, the reserve fund is up. It's at $27 million. Pensions are fully funded. That is a rare thing in California. Of course, there are many challenges, and Mayor Brand has announced task forces to tackle drugs, human trafficking, and homelessness.
We cannot hope to conquer this crisis by maintaining the status quo. We need to work. We need bold ideas and the full cooperation of our community partners.
Fresno Mayor Lee Brand joining us here this morning. Thanks so much for being with us. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Coming out of the State of the City address, your second, I believe.
Right, yeah, big deal.
Is the second one easier than the first one?
I thought it was easier. Others might think it was more difficult, but I thought it came out really well. Got a good reception from people afterward. It was a balanced speech to kind of, a lot of good things happening with the city of Fresno.
Well, sure. Well, let's talk about one of the things that jumps off the page a little bit, and that's just about a week ago, we saw those new unemployment numbers coming out. 5% in the city of Fresno.
To put context in that,
okay,
and at the height of the recession in 2011 or 12, it was over 18%. 3 years ago, over 11%. For Fresno to get to 5%, even though maybe the state's at 3.9, that's amazing. I mean, you'll see a lot of help wanted ads out there. So to me, it's a sign that we're going in the right direction. And that does not factor in Amazon Ultra. They not really did their hiring yet. So in the lower the rate gets, really, it'll start to lift wages too, which is a big problem.
Yeah, I was curious if the unemployment rate has any tangible effects that comes out of that.
I think so. I mean, that's been one of the criticisms. I think that the rate's been really low nationally, is that you're not seeing the wages rise as much. But I think we'll start to see that in Fresno. And my point is to get people that traditionally are not employed, people on welfare, people underemployed, to get them an opportunity at places like Amazon and other ones to have a decent start, get benefits, vacation, 401k, start to be part of the American dream.
Let's talk about that Street to Home initiative. Obviously, Fresno has plenty of challenges in front of it. There are lots of things going in the right direction, but there's other things that continue to be a thorn in our side. Homelessness is one of those issues, obviously.
Absolutely.
You just introduced this new initiative that the Fresno City is also doing within the county. How does this work? Is this housing?
Yeah, it's a combination. It's a task force headed by Sal Quintero, chair of the Fresno County Board of Supervisors, myself as the mayor, and on this board we'll have all the major providers like the Continuum of Care, Poverty House, Rescue Mission, Housing Authority, and the goal is to take a comprehensive approach. Our last point in time count, we were actually dropped a bit, but Fresno County went up. So we're going to try to find like a shelter, transitional housing, permanent housing. We have roughly a couple hundred people on the street. We want to get the people off the street, and then the important thing, give them a back door. How do you get beyond this revolving door? That's through case management, finding like at the Rescue Mission, they'll get people where GEDs, get them documented, get them ready for employment, and then working with the Housing Authority who may offer up to 600 vouchers to get into permanent housing. So there's a stream of people going through with a goal of reducing the homeless population significantly. I won't say go to zero, that's pretty ambitious, but to make a serious dent in the problem. You
mentioned transitional housing. I've heard of temporary housing. I know that I think at least a couple of the council members have been down to San Diego to look at some giant tents.
Yeah, it's called the sprung structure.
Okay, how does that work?
It's like an aircraft hangar, but it has air conditioning. You bring in beds. It's not too bad. It's a lot less expensive, but you might have one where maybe you'd accommodate 150 to 200 people, and that would be like the intake and the transitional housing. Typically, you'd want to get people out of there within 90 to 120 days, into maybe to the Rescue Mission, other programs. There's some local developers looking at buying the hacienda.
Okay.
So there's a lot of options out there. But
where would that go?
Well, that would be probably by the where the POV is at right now, on Rescue Mission. It's kind of a campus there, and there's a vacated street that we're looking at that the POV would play a major role in that.
Let me ask you about the city budget, because that's the thing that had city council this past week, all aflutter. We talked recently, Councilmember Luis Chavez was here telling us about this $9.9 million that has now popped up and has now been made available. I know you want to put that into the reserve fund because, well, that does a lot of things. That can help with, I think it makes the city's financial outlook better to creditors, right?
Absolutely. This was born out of necessity, out of desperation. In 2012, the city couldn't close the books out, needed money, so they recognized the 13th month of $3.5 million. And I voted for it. It was a prudent thing at the time. But basically, it's been carried on the books. It just rolls forward every year. So this year, the council hires a budget analyst to look at it, and he identifies the 9.9. That's no crude, but to take it now, you've got to move it to August. So your fiscal year, this is confusing, is July 1st to June 30th, but you recognize your sales tax revenue from September 1st, August 31st. So you're essentially, if you spent the money, that money may not be there 14 months from now, or might be reduced because of recession. So as you said earlier, the prudent thing to do is to place the entire amount, 9.9, in the reserve account, which would bring us up to $34 million, which is roughly 10% of our general fund budget. That's my goal.
And that's where you want to be. But council members, they want to spend that money on their districts.
Some may do. I think the majority of the council will vote to put that into reserve.
The entire thing into reserve? Because
yes.
I know that then the money that you had already, what, $3.5 million that you would have put into reserve, then that becomes available, right?
That's the trade-off. I think I've given up on the 3.5, but I want to make sure that's done in a responsible way.
All right, so $10 million into reserve,
right.
$3.5 million that was going to go into the reserve, now available. I hope everybody's following me on this one. All right, and so then there's the talk. Where do you spend it on? I heard that you would like to spend it on a fire station in West Fresno.
Ideally, it would be a one-time expense. For example, if you decide to hire 10 more police officers, well, let's say $1 million a year, then you need that for the next 5 or 10 years. You can't just get it for 1 year. If you use that as basically a large down payment on a fire station, then you maybe finance the balance, what they call the city's investment pool, which is low, like 1.5%. It's short term, less than 5 years. Then you're in my goal of buying everything cash. You're not accruing additional debt on the general fund, because the 15-year plan is to go from 30+ million down to 4 million in 15 years.
So you can use this sort of money. It's best to use this sort of money to build something. It's not good to use this sort of money to pay for somebody, because then you have to keep paying for that person.
Well, there was a motion to put basically divided by 7. Well, I don't think that would be a responsible way to spend the money. I would rather see something better, and my hope is that...
because it's not enough money? Is that the thought?
Well, if you just arbitrarily give $500,000 out, well, you got to be accountable for it. Not that they couldn't find good things to do. The more prudent thing, if they don't accept they need at least 4 votes for the it was Councilmember Brandel's motion, then I would give them a list. These are things I'd also recommend, and hopefully we'll find a resolution. We've got a week to go, so I try to work with people. I don't try to dictate to people, but I need to have them follow a prudent fiscal line. We've got ourselves out of trouble, probably in the best condition we've been in many years. So that can easily start sliding on a slippery slope by making decisions about not balancing your budget or creating obligations that you have to fund for the next 10 years.
Well, you're correct. It is confusing in some ways, but it's important as well, and I appreciate you coming on the program to talk to us about it.
Thank you.
Mayor Lee Brand, thanks so much. And after the break, we got more city talk with our panel, plus a bill that would prevent restaurants from advertising sugary drinks with its kids' meals. Is this needed? Is it going too far? That's next.